Hey, what's up, guys? You're listening to the It Takes a Village podcast. I'm Ashley, your host. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to be doing this episode. Finally, me and Chanelle from Moms Who Know podcast have been trying to get this recorded for so long. And I just love her podcast. I love your podcast. And I'm excited to have you on and to talk about all the mom things.
Yes. It'll be good.
So before we get started, I would love for you to kind of tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what life kind of looks like for you right now, and just like a small little intro.
Sure. So I live in Southern California with my husband and my 5 kids. They go from high school down to 2 years old. And I also want to just say I'm not normally quite this husky voiced, but I have a little frog in my throat today. So if you ever hear me, I'm not usually. But anyway, my first 4 kids were born in 6 years. So we had them all nice and close together. And then we had a 7-year gap and a wonderful surprise who is our baby number 5. So he is 2 and he's great. And then I do the podcast. I'm an author of a parenting book called Parenting with Purpose and then several children's books. And I am a yoga instructor. So that's me.
You're like the jack of all trades.
I do
or
a lot
Jill of all trades. I really want to ask you about this because the age gap thing is like a huge question, and you've seen a ton of blog posts about it. Like, what should my age gap be between my kids? And were you like totally freaking out when you had your last kiddo who's 2 and there was a 7-year age gap?
Yeah. So my response to that was like, well, then we just have to have another one. And prayed really hard that he would be twins because I'm like, I kind of don't want to be pregnant again. But if he's twins, it will all be perfect. And, then there will be 2 and problem solved. But he's just a single birth. I was worried about it, but I'll tell you, having the 4 older kids and then having this little guy has been amazing. I mean, for me as a mom, I get so much help, which is wonderful. And then they just love him. And we were close as a family before, but I feel like he has really brought our family together at a whole new level. And it just has been amazing to have him in our family. So while I wouldn't have planned it that way, I'm super glad it happened that way.
Yeah. I love that. And I could totally see how that would play out. Like, it gives the older ones kind of like this sense of like tie-in back to the family of responsibility and like just uniting, I guess, together to, take care of the little guy. Like, they all feel like ownership over that.
Yeah, totally they do. And like when we're at church, he's getting bigger now, so he doesn't exactly need to be held. But as a baby, I would never hold him during church. The kids would say, it's my turn, and then me. And they would like get a lineup of who got to hold him. And people would watch that and say, that is the sweetest. And I'm like, and it is, and it's wonderful as a mom. Sometimes as a mom, you just want a break. And so I feel like best of both worlds. I got a break, and I got this sweet little baby.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So as a mama of a big family, I know a lot of us on the outside, we always look into these big families and we're like, I don't know how they do that. Like I have 2 kids and I couldn't imagine the chaos of more. Like how do you do that? So I love that your blog and you have resources for moms who basically like you help them to navigate like how to do that. And so I would love for you to share some of these tips on that you've learned how to not lose, I guess, your sanity in having a big family.
Yeah. Okay. So I come from an even bigger family. Actually, I come from 8, and I'm the oldest of 8 kids.
Oh my goodness!
And I've always grown up around kids and family. I think I have 50 first cousins on my dad's side alone.
Wow.
I have 0 on my mom's side and 50 on my dad's side, and so their kids have always been a part of my and I always thought, I'm going to have this big family. It's going to be great, piece of cake. I helped my siblings would sometimes call me mom number two.
Yeah.
So I got this.
Yeah.
And then having kids, I was blown away by how different it was and how
Yeah.
hard it was and how just relentless the demands of motherhood
Mhm.
were. It really kind of takes you by surprise. And so originally I had wanted to have six, and then that number went down, and then we had four. I'm like, four is great. And then five is great too. But yeah, so I think it really, there's a lot that goes into it, but my biggest answer for what helps me keep my sanity is self care
Mm.
and routines.
Yeah.
Those two things are things I always come back to when my life starts to get out of whack or out of balance or am feeling a little like crazy mom. I'm like, all right, what I need to take care of me and I need to do it regularly, have a routine for it so that I don't get off track.
Yeah. Was it easy for you to like come up with something for yourself or a routine for your family, or did you have to kind of like trial and error it? How did you go about figuring out how to like set your guys up for success, I guess?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. This was not modeled to me as a
Mm.
kid. My mom was always with the babies, and that's her love and her passion. She loves babies. And so I kind of thought that's what moms do. They just give their all to their kids. Now we do that on a certain level.
Yeah.
But when I had the four kids in 6 years, so the first two are a year and a half apart, and then 3 years, and then the second two are a year and a half apart.
Mm.
So I had always two babies at the same time. And after my youngest, my was like a few years old, just a toddler, I was so burned out and stressed out just
Yeah.
all the time. I felt like angry all the
Mm.
time, and little things would make me upset.
Yeah.
And I also noticed um, my I was putting on weight around my belly. Now I'm a real pear shape, so I usually put it on like hips and thighs kind of thing. But I was putting it on in my belly, and so I went to the doctor and had my cortisol tested, which is stress hormone, and he said it was through the okay, really something needs to change. And so it took me that to see it. So it wasn't like, oh, yes, I know I should take care of myself. I really did some introspection and I thought, what is going to help me to take care of me? And
Yeah.
the thing I came up with was yoga. And I had been a yoga instructor and I taught, the most workout kind of yoga you can have, like a power yoga flow is what I
Mhm.
really liked. But I thought, that's not what I need. I need relaxation. So I started with doing a yin style yoga, which, if you're not familiar, is just you hold the poses for sometimes 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's you're in a pose, you're breathing, it's very slow. And so I said, I'm going to do this for myself every morning, and I'm going to go in the office and I'm going to shut the door, and no one can come in. And I had to train my kids, you do not come in when mom's here in the morning. And I
Mhm.
had to train my husband, please take care of all needs that the kids have. Don't refer anyone to me. No one's coming in. So that was really the start for me of learning about self care. And that made a huge difference because
Yeah.
I went from totally stressed out and angry all the time to like, I could handle a lot more
Mhm.
coming at me. And it took me a while to kind of put that link. Oh, it's not just the yoga, it's the self care. And it's the fact that I'm doing it every day that's really
Yeah.
the difference.
Yeah, I think that we don't really take it seriously, like how important it is to just get back to the basics of, wait, what did I do for myself before the kids? And, like I mean almost every episode at some point we've talked about I've learned, somebody saying I've learned that I need to do self-care or I go insane. I turn into this person that I don't like. And obviously you get angrier easier, you're more impatient, um, and yeah, I think that it isn't. I think that's so true that it isn't necessarily about what you're doing, but just the fact that you're doing something that is on you. Like you're focused on yourself for a minute, because the rest of the day we're just like focused. like full throttle on our children, on our work, on, this or that, and we put ourselves last, and it's really hard to do that.
Exactly. And I think before you have kids, it can be a little less, not less important. It
Yeah.
just happens more naturally,
Mhm.
right? Like before kids, after work, you can just come home and take your shoes off and sit down for a minute. After kids, if you're a working mom, you come home, the kids need you right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
If whatever you're doing, it always kind of gets whatever the kids' needs are,
Mhm.
rise to the top, right? And we put those first and we put our own needs second. And so that's why I teach moms to have this routine of putting themselves first, not all the time, because we can't. Kids are going to have needs, and it's not like, oh my gosh, be selfish, go to the spa all day, do all your stuff, and ignore your kids. No, it's have a time set aside when you're putting your own needs first so that it gets taken care of
Yeah.
so that you can move on and then be that kind of mom.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's funny that you brought up like before we have kids. I think before we have kids, we didn't even notice like we were doing that self care, like you said. So then when we become moms, we kind of set ourselves up for failure because we're not realizing that's what that was all these years before, and then we don't include it moving forward. Um,
Yeah, so true.
yeah. What? So I was like browsing through your website for a while, a long time because we've known each other for a while now. But um, I saw that you have like this whole section of dinner because you just mentioned being prepared and having routines and doing having all these things in motion so that way your life just kind of flows easier. And I know dinner is one of your big things, and I have just learned, like, I just started working full time. Dinner, I had no idea how much I would like appreciate meal planning, and how like how grateful I am for like moms who are like, this is how you do it and this is how it's going to save your life. How do you come across like that was necessary for your family?
Oh my goodness. The more things I have going on,
Yeah.
the more that it's easy to just feed your kids not the kind of dinner you want to feed them
Yeah.
also. We want them to have this healthy meal, and we want them to, we want to sit down as a family with sit down to dinner together, and yet all these things can come up. And so meal planning is actually something I hear from my podcast listeners a lot that stresses them out.
Yeah.
It's that time of day. Sometimes, dad's not home from work yet, and mom's trying to get dinner on the table, and the kids are all losing it. And you are too. And a perfect storm. And so I think that's why there's so much stuff around dinner prep.
Yeah.
But there are a few things that I think help. If you want me to go into those, we can talk about.
Sure. I mean, yes.
Okay, so one of those is to really, really simplify your meals. I know for me, I used to go on Pinterest and search all around
Mhm.
and find this
Yep.
big recipe, and then you find all the stuff and make it, and sometimes you have to make a trip to the store. I mean, it can be this big long process. So what I've done is simplify, and I recommend, no matter where if you love to cook and this time of day is not stressing you out, great, carry on. But if it is stressing you out, then there are a few ways you can simplify. So one of those is just to simplify your meals. Last night for dinner, I wasn't feeling well. I have this throat thing. And so my husband went to Costco. Major props to him. I think that's the first ever done the Costco shopping, and it was so nice to have a break. Anyway, he went to Costco and came home, and so I said, pick up a rotisserie chicken, and while he was gone, I threw some potatoes in the oven and some asparagus on the stove. It did not take me long to prep that meal, and he came home and we had dinner, and it was ready to go. Um, so just really simple meals that are already partly or all the way done for you. There
Yeah.
are so many things, you can heat up that are healthy, like chicken sausages at Costco or,
Oh, yes.
you know, mixes, all those kind of things. So that's okay. If that's your dinner, totally don't feel guilty about that. We can simplify that. That's good. Another way to simplify your dinner is meal planning services. So that I have a link to that my website that you were talking about, and that is just all the recipes and the menus and the grocery list is done for you. So it takes all that prep time out, and then you just look at it the day of, like, okay, what what are we going to eat today? Okay, this. We already have all the ingredients. And so that taking the mental pressure of having to think about it
Yeah.
off the plate, that is huge. And then the other way that you can simplify is there are all kinds of like meal planning service, or the kind of like food prep services that will deliver them to your house. Those are, I say that one last because that one's the most costly,
Yeah.
but it is something that can help. If you're working and you like chop your onions and do all this stuff, you put it together and you still get a meal plan, dinner on the table. So I think that sometimes the biggest thing, though, in getting dinner on the table is letting go of our expectations
Yeah.
and our guilt for not having it be a certain way.
Yeah, that's really true. I really learned to make it simple once I started working full time, and honestly, I mean, my kids really appreciated, some, or my family sometimes, sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't appreciate my Pinterest, tries, but they really didn't mind that meals were so simple. Like it wasn't like this huge deal. Like, Mom, come on, there's not like, my potatoes don't look like a swan. What are you thinking? Or anything. Like they don't care, and I think we do put so much stress on ourselves, and it's I don't know why we do that to ourselves.
We do. It's funny you say that because I've noticed that so much that my kids don't even notice, or my husband for that matter. I have way side meals. I have a lot of things going on, a lot of projects I'm working on. And so my meals are not what they used to be. And ironically, people still like them the same. you know, I used to, but the nice thing is, if I'm just doing something simple like we did last night, rotisserie chicken, if someone doesn't like it, hey, no big deal. But if I spent hours making
Yeah.
something I found on Pinterest, there's a little more attachment there, and
Yeah.
it's traded with your kids. So it's kind of a win-win. They aren't even noticing anything different. They're just as happy as they were before, and I'm not spending as much time on dinner. So all good stuff.
Yeah, totally. I wanted to ask you, being from a large family and then watching your mom raise like all the kiddos, what was something that you took away, whether it was like when I'm a parent, like now that you have your own large family, what was something that you took away that you were like, this is what I'm not going to do, or this is what I absolutely need to do?
Okay, so many things. Good and bad. My parents are great. They're very involved parents, and I've appreciated that, especially as their grandparents now, and to see we are their number one. Their kids, their family matter so much to them, and I love that. So one thing that my mom did that was great that I want to be better. My mom always made sure we had fun together as a family. And if there was a holiday, if my dad had the day off work, um, and we had the day off school, or sometimes they'd just pull us out of school, and we would go do something fun. We'd go to the fair, we'd go to Disneyland. We grew up in, near Disneyland, or
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
fun things. And it was always about spending time together. And that is so fun. And it's easy for me as a mom to be very work oriented. Kids, we
Mhm.
have to do our schoolwork, we have to do our chores, we have to do this stuff. And sometimes I forget the fun. And so that's something that I want to implement more, that my mom's good example. And on the flip side, because I'm the oldest, there was always a baby.
Yeah.
Always a baby. Um, in fact, my last sister and I are 20 years apart. So even when I was in college, my mom had. So my mom is a very devoted mom and very devoted to her babies, and she spends a lot of time with the babies. And so part of the reason that we had our kids, our first four in 6 years, is because I wanted my kids to kind of be in the same stage. And
Mhm.
as a mom, I didn't want to be devoting all my time to the baby and having my older kids feel left out or that they weren't as important or that we couldn't do certain things because we had a baby.
Yeah.
For me, I do love my babies, but I always try to remember they aren't going to remember if it was mom or dad or an older sibling holding them. But my older kid is going to remember if I was at their event or if
Mm.
when they were having a hard day, I went into their room and talked to them, or if I was always too busy with the baby. So that's something I try to be really conscious of. And please don't think that I throwing my mom under the bus. She was great. But, it's just something that because of the way I grew up that I try to be extra aware of.
Yeah. No, we can always take, I mean, I think everybody has something that, they're like, yes, I will do that about my mom, and no, I'm going to do the opposite. And I think it's all in good, just us learning and growing and figuring out our own groove and parenting for ourselves and all that. Before I ask you the last three questions that I have for you, I wanted to let everybody um, be like tell everybody where they can find you, where they can get to your resources, and of course your podcast. If you could share those with us really quick.
Yes, so my podcast is called Moms Who Know, and my website is momswhoknowpodcast.com. So we talk to moms about all things self-care and taking care of yourself so that you can take better care of everyone else.
Ah, I love it. Which is so good. I think it's really good that they're like you have such a podcast, because that is the hardest thing. Like I said earlier, so like every time I talk about it, I'm like it's so hard because I can tell you all day like this is what I need to do. This is what you need to do, because we're like you and we're both interviewing people who are very knowledgeable in these things and how we can take care of ourselves. But then at the end of the day, like when you're actually in real life and you have a child running around with diapers on its head that have pee in them, and your dogs are, barking at the door, and, all this stuff, like then you're just like, okay, that sounds good, but I can't do that. Um, and I think it's just one of those things that it'll click like as much one I think for every episode it'll click with somebody new, and they'll be able to work the right thing into their routine, and that is going to be life saving.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's totally my hope, that moms can, because sometimes we have these big ideas and I like to kind of simplify it down.
Yeah.
That's one of my things is like make it as simple as possible so you can keep doing it. So that self-care is not like a one-time thing, like, boom, I did this huge thing for myself. No,
Yeah.
it's little things every single day.
Hmm. Yeah, and that way also it's realistic. We can
Yes.
actually do it to where we're like, okay, this I can do. A full spa day is not, which is what we tend to think about when we think of self care.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you. Well, actually, I didn't tell you this question, so this would actually be four questions. But what is the best takeaway that you've gotten from a podcast interview from your podcast, do you think?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. I have been podcasting for about a year and a half now, and there's
Mm.
been so many, but I'll tell you a recent one over the last couple of months that really just hit me. Um, I had interviewed several people, and so one person, but it kept coming up.
Uh-huh.
And what I noticed is that these women said that things started to really shift for them when they got a coach. Now, one of them got a business coach, another one got a life coach. There were, I think, a couple. I also had a life coach on that got a life coach. So it's interesting because in my mind, I kind of thought like, well, I would never pay to have a coach.
Mhm.
For one thing, I'm thrifty, and for another thing, like I'm good. I've got lots, I figure out life. I'm fine. But taking that step and investing in yourself to get to the next level is super important. And
Mhm.
it really hit me hard that when we want to up level, whether that's in business or setting up our routines or, having whatever it is, whatever new thing we want, when we have help, And that can be through a lot of different methods. It might not be like a one-on-one coach. It might be an online program or something like that. But when we invest in ourselves, that's the big takeaway. Investing in yourself yields results. And I heard a webinar on this recently by Ben Hardy, who talked about any investment we make in ourselves is 10 times the results
Mm.
what comes out. And so that's my latest. The more we invest in ourselves, the more things come out. And really, it ties back into this idea of having a morning routine, of having self care. We put this in, we invest that in us, and then it comes out by allowing us to be these amazing moms
Yeah.
because we filled our own cup first.
Yeah. And it sounds so like it doesn't it sounds so like in your like I don't know, woo woo or like out there like cuz you can't touch it. Like it's not something
Yeah.
that and so I think that it's really hard for us to put value in that or to see it because it's not something that like after you spend 20 minutes reading before the kids get up that you're just going to see fireworks go off and everybody's going to, it's going to be like this old 50s, like breakfast morning where, on those TV shows where everybody's like, hi, mom, or whatever. But it does actually, it does make a difference over time. And yeah, I don't know any other way to be like, just do it, guys, just do it.
Yes.
So I know this question had you like going for a little bit, but I'm going to ask, what is something that you are most obsessed with right now?
Yeah, I wanted to have a really fun answer, and I don't. But I will say I do love a good hot bath. All by myself, no kids. Sometimes
Yeah.
my 2-year-old will think, "Oh, mom's taking a bath. I'm gonna hop in." But a bath with essential oils and salt is the best.
Yeah, totally. I I never do that. I think I'm too impatient to sit there so long. I'm like, and my mind, which is probably means I need to do it because in the bath I'm like, oh, I could be doing this. I could be doing this. I could be doing this. And so I don't ever do it. I don't know. I need to probably. So this kind of ties in with everything that we were talking about. But what is your favorite form of self care?
So if I had to choose just one way, I think it would be yoga for
Mm,
me. I
yeah.
love yoga because it kind of combines not just the physical movement, but the mental and with the breathing.
Hmm.
It just kind of ties it all together for me. So if there was one thing, I'd say yoga.
If you're thinking, I know that there are some very like avid yoga goers that are like, yes, yoga is life changing. And then if you haven't done yoga before, like I was hardcore, like what is it, hit workouts. I love like fast pace. I felt because you have that immediate gratification of sore muscles or you're like completely exhausted, you're completely sweaty. And you think that yoga on the outside looks like something that's easy and it's slow and it's calm and it's quiet. And sometimes it is. But when I got into yoga, I had no idea how much like rejuvenation I would feel from not having to torment my body as much. Like it's really it's just so good that you get to relax for one. Like that's included in your workout. Like come on now. Like you get to lay down. Um and then also it still does push you and it challenges you to be with yourself, which we don't like with our own thoughts with no iPhone going or TV going or whatever. And so I would challenge everybody to try it at a gym first because at home I know that I do not have the attention span to do it on my own sometimes.
And
But yeah.
I'll say also, when you're doing a harder workout, you do get that muscle soreness and tiredness quicker. But with yoga, a lot of times, if you're doing a very physical practice,
Mhm.
you'll feel that the next day and you're like,
Oh yeah.
oh, I worked this muscle. Oh, and so it's really interesting because while you're doing it, like you said, from the outside, it looks easy. While you're doing it, you're like,
Hmm.
oh, this is kind of hard. How long are we going to hold this pose? But then the next day, you're like, wow, I
Yeah.
really did work my body.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I totally agree. My last question for you is what is the best time management mom hack that you have?
So my mom hack is to set a timer. So this is for my kids or myself.
Mhm.
There are so many times that we make the jobs that need to be done bigger than they need to be.
Mhm.
And so I have several little things in my routine that I do. Like, for example, after I drop my kids off at school, I come home, I set a timer for 10 minutes, and I clean for 10 minutes. When that 10 minutes is over, I'm done. And you know what? I can get a lot done in 10 minutes.
Mhm.
But if it's not all done, I'm moving on anyway. I that is not my number one priority of, to have a spotless house, and I
Yeah.
need to have a clean enough house, and that's what it is, clean enough. So that timer also works well with kids when you have stuff for them to do, either that they don't want to do or that they're putting off, like, okay, just work on your room for 15 minutes and then we'll take a break. Or something like that. Or I think you can race against the clock. Like, I bet you could get these dishes done in 10 minutes. Let's
Yeah.
set a time and see. So that really helps us because it keeps our time very focused and lets us get stuff done. And it also, those big projects that you don't want to tackle, lets you just make progress.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, and I think that time is a really hard thing for our littles to really grasp. Like we're always saying, clean up this room before dinner, and then, it's like we expect them to know when that is, or like it's just I think that's a good idea, timers, because then it just puts it into like they can either see it clicking or whatever kind of timer. It's more visual, more tangible instead of just guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Um, and I do have a bonus question. I have all these bonus questions for you. I hope you, I hope you
This
will.
is great.
If you could ask me one question, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay. I have a few questions. Let me
Oh no,
narrow.
just one.
All right. Well, I have questions I would ask you about your podcast, but I think I would ask you this. What has been the hardest transition as you've become a working mom to balance it all?
Hmm. I think that the hardest thing initially was probably managing my time. Like, when I was a stay-at-home mom, I didn't realize I had all these a lot of done, but because I wasn't on any sort of routine or time, like, even the timer thing comes to mind, you tend to like move faster when this is all the time I have. And so I think that knowing now that this huge chunk of my day I cannot do anything with because I am at work, I can't fudge that at all because, I'm responsible for my job. Um, yeah, like just I don't know, re-navigating that, especially like when do I have to wake up in the morning and then I have to plan it. Like this is what time I get up. Me and my husband plan who gets up next, who has a handle on the kids at what time. And then like when breakfast is made, making lunch the night before. I think those kind of things like I never did, and now I see the importance in like how much, yeah, I guess it's a routine and meal prepping, all that stuff that we talked about earlier, just coming together into one and just appreciating how good and how, if I had done that earlier, even when I wasn't working outside of the home, my life would have probably been less crazy. Less crazy.
I love that tie. I love that it tied into what we've been talking about because it just goes to show, it's relevant whether you're a stay-at-home mom or a working mom. This is something we all have to navigate when we have these little people in our lives and trying to figure it out. And as a stay-at-home mom, we can put it off. We can
Oh,
be like,
yeah.
"Oh, I'm fine, it's fine if I don't get anything done today." But that takes a toll on us
Yeah.
mentally, and we start to feel like I'm not getting anything done, and it
Hmm.
it impacts our self-esteem and our self-worth, and we just don't feel as good. And that's why you see a lot of moms like burned out and just feeling like they're, can't accomplish anything. It's not that they can't, it's that they aren't
Yeah.
sometimes. And that's, just a shift of what you do with your time.
Hmm. Totally agree. Yeah. And meal planning If anybody listening hasn't gone on the meal planning dinner train, I promise it is worth your it will be so amazing to I mean, I have no idea how I survived before that. And like now I'm like, what was I thinking? I have all this time now. Like I actually get to sit down when my kids are eating or like, I get to just put away the dishes after this or, throw it in the Instant Pot and I'm done. Um yeah, so much. So much I've learned so far. Well, thank you so much, Chanel, for coming on. I'm really glad we got to connect finally and talk about all the mom things and share all your knowledge and good stuff because, without each other, we can't really do it as easily as I think that we can with each other. So thanks for being on.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, make sure you share this with another mama who might benefit from it because, after all, it takes a village, right? Get it? But I hope you guys are having an awesome day. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. Catch you guys later.